Gin does games! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Gin here with another League of Legends Champion Guide. Are you tired of playing wimps, small children, and cowardly assassins? Do you crave justice? Then look no further than Garen Crownguard, the might of Demacia. He's strong, a veritable paragon of good, and oh so dashingly handsome. It's time to learn how to Garen. Garen is a tanky AD caster, fit especially for the top lane. He is fast, durable, and extraordinary at diving into fights to hunt down his target of choice, or simply applying damage to large groups. He has no mana, and indeed no cost to his abilities at all, leaving only some fairly long cooldowns holding him back. His passive, Perseverance, provides him with exceptional self-sustain. When he has not taken damage from any source but minions for the last 9 seconds, he begins to regenerate 0.5% of his maximum health each second. This is in addition to any other health regeneration he has, allowing him to stay in the lane much longer than most. It's also important to note that any source but minions clause. As he continues to regenerate when being attacked by minions, Garen becomes an absolute monster when left in the lane alone. He can take minion shots all day without a care in the world. Garen's Q is Decisive Strike. On activation, he removes all slows affecting him and gains 35% bonus move speed. In addition, his next attack deals extra physical damage and silences the target for a few seconds. Decisive Strike resets Garen's attack timer, and it deals additional damage to turrets, so be sure to keep this in mind while crushing towers. It's important to note that the move speed buff and the time you use to use the silencing strike are completely separate. You can use the strike first and then run, or vice versa, or anywhere in the middle. For its crazy utility of free movement speed, slow breaking, silence, and additional damage for better last hitting, I almost always take a point in this at level 1, but for reasons I'll mention later, we should max it out second. The Crownguard's W is Courage. Passively, Courage grants you a 20% increase to your armor and magic resistance. When activated, incoming damage and crowd control effects are both reduced by 30% for the next few seconds. This is great for both diving into and out of fights, ensuring Garen can survive long enough to get where he needs to go in either case. The passive, meanwhile, makes Garen even beefier all around and lets him scale quite well in the defensive department. The downside to this ability is that it has an extremely long cooldown, 24 seconds to start, and the size of the effect doesn't scale with level. Levels in Courage provide only a slightly shorter cooldown and a longer duration, which will be most useful in late game fights. Because of all this, we will take a point in this early for the free stats, usually around level 3, and max it out last. Judgement, Garen's E, is his biggest source of damage throughout the game. On activation, the Might of Demacia decides to do his best tilt-a-whirl impression and starts spinning in circles. Silly as it may be, he deals massive physical damage to all targets around him for 3 seconds, and ignores unit collision as he goes, but moves 20% slower while traveling through minions. The ability can be cancelled at your leisure, and Courage can be activated while spinning. Another fortunate bonus is the fact that this isn't a channeled ability. Because of that, if Garen is silenced, stunned, or anything of the sort, he doesn't stop spinning. It only makes him lose the ability to stop manually. As I mentioned, Judgement deals tons of damage in an area. This makes it great for clearing minion waves or harassing enemies, or even both at the same time. If Judgement is built up enough, you can quickly clear out minion waves and push the lane really far, leaving you time to do other things like gank or steal some of the enemy's jungle. Furthermore, this is where most of your damage potential in a team fight comes from, diving into the fray with Decisive Strike and Courage, and then slaughtering everything around you. For these reasons, we take a point in this at level 2 and max it out first. Finally, with R, the Might of Demacia calls down Demacian Justice. He summons the full strength of the Tribunal to ban target champion from the game. Or close enough anyway. Demacian Justice is a short-range nuke that deals massive magic damage to start, plus bonus damage based on how much health the enemy is missing. A lot of skill when playing Garen comes down to properly judging if the enemy's health is low enough to be taken down with this. The cooldown of this ability is exceptionally long, but once it's up, evildoers beware, for Garen Crownguard can smite thee hastily with a combination of Decisive Strike, Judgement, and Demacian Justice. Judge, Jury, and Executioner all in one package. As with most ultimates, you'll want to take this every chance you can get, especially with how significant the damage and cooldown reduction bonuses are for higher levels of this one. For runes, I use armor penetration marks, flat armor seals, magic resistance per level glyphs, and movement speed quintessences. Though not pictured here, mostly because I don't own them yet, also consider armor penetration quintessences. As his damage mostly comes from physical damaging abilities, Garen scales particularly well with armor penetration. The defenses are great as they scale with courage and generally make a tanky man even harder to kill. From here, the information gets a little fuzzier. I know that Masteries and items are receiving significant changes before Season 3 hits. Even the summoner spells will have some changes. I thought about waiting, but if I did, then I'd have even less of an idea of what I was talking about. So take the next bit with a grain of salt. For Masteries, I take 2190, getting as much damage and penetration as possible. This allows me to be a huge bully in the early game, just as Garen should be. For a slightly tankier build, you might also consider 9210, making sure to get the move speed bonuses later in the tree to get into position better. As for those summoner spells, I almost always take Exhaust. Garen doesn't have any strong crowd control effects to hold enemies in place of his own, so this helps immensely. Flash is great on anyone. Ghost is a solid choice and combos particularly well with Decisive Strike. Maybe Rammus can outrun you, and that's about it. Teleport's a great choice as Garen can cover and push lanes extremely well with Judgement, and if you can hop to a ward in the bushes where Garen belongs, all the better. Finally, I hear tell that the spell Barrier from the Proving Grounds will be making its way to Summoner's Rift. This would work quite well on Garen in conjunction with Courage, making him take even less damage in teamfights than he already was. Items I'm going to try and be as accurate with as possible. I know of a few changes happening for Season 3 and will keep them in mind, but this build should work in either case. Start with Boots of Speed and 3 health potions. Not only is this the generally accepted start for anyone at the moment, it works especially well for Garen, considering his short range and how awesome they are in conjunction with Decisive Strike. It's not uncommon to be running near 500 movement speed early on with Decisive Strike and Boots. Next, rush towards a Brutalizer as quickly as possible. The attack damage, cooldown reduction, and armor penetration are all things you'll want to dominate the early game. That Brutalizer can turn into a few different things. On Twisted Treeline, turning this into Lord Von Dom's Pillager as quickly as possible will make you a beefy beast. On current Summoner's Rift, you can turn it into a Yomu's Ghostblade in the late game. Though the attack speed buff isn't entirely necessary, the move speed bonus adds to your already powerful running. In Season 3 though, you can turn that Brutalizer into a Black Cleaver. Adding another 20 attack damage rather than attack speed like the current one does, the new Cleaver shreds armor whenever you deal physical damage rather than auto attacks. This works amazingly well with Judgement, letting you dive in and shred the entire enemy team, while your AD carry comes in behind to clean house. From here we can grab a second level of boots. Garen can work with a large number of boots really. Ninjitabi for high AD teams, Mercury Treads to stack with courage, Ionian Boots of Lucidity give the cooldown reduction he very much enjoys, even Boots of Swiftness, which arguably don't work well on most champs, could be a good choice in negating the slowdown from Judgement. Personally, I prefer Mercury Treads. For the third slot, I generally build a Guardian Angel as quickly as possible. If the enemy found you hard to kill before, you're gonna annoy the hell out of him now. Again, those stats from Courage make you all the tankier. At this point, we can diverge depending on if you want to deal as much damage as possible, or if you want to be even harder to kill. For a damage build, consider Bloodthirsters, a Last Whisper, and even an Infinity Edge, as your abilities can crit, just not as much as a normal auto attack would. For a defensive build, next you can jump for a Warmog's and the wonderful combo there with Atma's Impaler. The Warmog's armor in particular will go really well with your passive. Normally, I might also suggest a Force of Nature, but I hear that friend of ours may be leaving the game soon in the preseason. So, instead, I suggest a Sunfire Cape, as you'll be sitting on top of your enemies anyway. If, however, you really need the magic resistance, I can suggest a Hex Drinker for the Magic Shield, as well as giving you even more damage once it evolves into a Maw of Malmortius. Generally speaking, Garen has a lot of trouble facing off against long-range characters in the lane by his very nature. If that happens, consider trading spots with an ally. On the other hand, Garen has some insane poke potential in a lane, and one popping out of a bush will generally take down half an enemy's health bar without any loss of his own. And, if he does lose some health, he can sit back for a little while and regenerate it. In a team fight, Garen's job is to dive in right for the enemy carry. If you've done fairly well up to that point, you'll be beefy enough to wade through the enemy team with ease to chase down your target. And, while you draw aggro, your allies can come in behind you to fight as well. Learn in particular to properly eye the amount of health your enemies have left. Demacian Justice can instantly drop unsuspecting enemies if you do it right. Garen's dominance is shown particularly in the early game. If you don't capitalize on that though, Garen will quickly fall off in the late game. You must be a bully. You must dominate your lane, or a lane at least, or else you'll be blown to bits all the sooner. Garen's biggest concern, especially in the early game, are his cooldowns. Decisive Strike is the shortest one, and without any reductions it's 8 seconds. The cooldown on Demacian Justice at level 1 is almost 3 minutes. Be very wary about getting caught out of position when your abilities are all on cooldown, because they will wipe the floor with you in the meantime. Garen is a powerful champion that will dominate the early game if you play it right. Harass the enemy and make the most of hiding in bushes, and you will come out on top. Don't forget to spin to win for Demacia!
You locked in your characters, let me explain the tale of a man who's caused so much pain. Demacia is the place he was raised. If you listen to me, you'll be quite amazed to learn why he's the king of the rift. The enemy, their raw stand stiff. The heart of a team on mid-lane bushes. The reason your foes stay out of the bushes. The heat of a battle, Garen appears. Down the top lane runs a river of tears. A beacon of light watches enemies run. On his back, 18 close to the sun. The lane seems clear, but it's hard to say.